Can you see that screen?
Public Contract Scotland, yes.
Yes. Okay, good. Right, good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the webinar for the South Lanarkshire Council's Employability PSA. And we're just going to find it first of all on Public Contract Scotland. Sorry, I do look to the side because that's where my second screen is, which is a bigger screen. So for those of you who are not familiar with Public Contract Scotland, this is where a lot of the contract notices are for any of the Scottish public sector. So first of all, what we'll do is we'll go into search notices at the top here. You don't actually have to be registered with PCS in this case because they are using a different portal for this one. So as you'll see, there are a lot of different notices down here, and it would take too long to scroll down and find the one that you're looking for. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the filters on the left here. Excuse me. I think I'm just getting a cold. So if we go into the buyer name here and we'll do South Lanarkshire, and you can see it pops up with different ones. I'm just going to choose the top one, which is South Lanarkshire Council. We know that it's a current opportunity that we're looking for, so we'll click in there and then we'll search notices. And there you can see the very first one at the top of the list is the one that we want. Employability Services, Procured Services Arrangement. You can see it was published just over a week ago on the 21st of October, and the deadline for it is the 3rd of December 25. So you've got quite a while to do this, which is quite good news. And what you can see here is the this flag just shows you that it's published UK-wide if it's above a certain value. And this one here is a new icon, and that means that PCS-t is being used to conduct this tender. So what I'd be quite interested in is if you could put in the chat function whether or not you have used PCS-t before, whether you're registered on it or not. And if you're not, if anybody isn't, then I can take you through how to register on it. That's PCS-t. That's good. Claire has used it quite a lot. Margaret's on it too. Just keep them coming. That's good. So people seem to be familiar with it, but don't feel shy if David hasn't, so that's fine. We're going to go through it as if you haven't used it, because that's the main purpose of today, is to make sure you can use the system. But before we do that, let's have a wee look at the contract notice. So, as I said before, published on the 21st of October, deadline is the 3rd of December. But worth noting, and you don't see this until much later on, that the deadline for asking questions is the 19th of November. So what I would suggest is that you look through everything that you're being that's been published and all the things that you need to complete, and make notes of any questions that you've got so that you could ask them in plenty of time. The sooner you ask them, the better. So this one is a 10-year term. So if you can get on to this, it means that South Lanarkshire Council can call off of this arrangement, i.e. make a contract with you for any time over the next 10 years, which is really good that you've only got to do this once. If for some reason you don't make it into this phase of signing up for it and applying for it, if there's something about your application or you decide for whatever reason not to go for it this time, there will be further opportunities over the 10 years where you can apply. So not all is lost. If we go into the full text notice, the different tabs at the top, what you'll notice if you scroll down is that there are actually 4 different lots. So we've got one which is work-based learning, 2, which is targeted support services, 3, which is health, wellbeing and financial support, and 4, which is anything else that doesn't fall within those 3 categories. The other thing worth noting is that the criteria is very heavily based on quality. So quality is the key thing at 90%, and price has a weighting of 10. Now, what's worth noting is that I know that Fran said you're in competition. In a way you are, but in reality, because of this particular situation, there is actually no limit to the number of providers that will be added to the lots, any of the lots. So basically there's room for everybody, which is really good news. And just checking my list of things that I wanted to tell you about it at this stage. And yes, I've covered everything that I wanted to cover on this. So it's 10 years, there's no limit to the number of providers, and there are 4 lots. So if you come down to this section, I know this might be really quite small on your screen because there's a lot of writing on here, but obviously you can follow along or you can look this up afterwards and you will get a recording of this webinar, so you can listen to it again, watch it again. There are various criteria that they have asked for. So within a tendering process, there's usually what we call selection criteria, and then there are award criteria. And what these 2 different things mean is selection is about the company or the organisation and about having the right insurances, financial health and all the rest of it, qualifications. And then the award criteria is actually about what you're going to do. What is your solution going to be like? What is your service going to be like? And how much does it cost? So in basic terms, that's what these 2 things are. So what South Lanarkshire have very helpfully done in this case is they have listed a lot of the selection criteria in the contract notice itself. So I'd also be interested to know if you've read through the selection criteria and if you've got any questions on this bit. So for example, they would prefer you to be registered with Companies House as a limited company. But what they've said is if you aren't, then you just need some evidence that you're trading from the address that you're trading in. So that could be a bank statement, for example, for the business. They've also put some ratios here from your accounts. And what they say is you need to be able to achieve what they're asking for 2 out of 3 of the ratios. But again, if you haven't, so just say, for example, you haven't got any accounts yet because you're brand new, then there are other questions here that you can ask. What you might need to do is ask a question, and if there's anything there that you're in doubts about whether you would pass or fail or not, then feel free to ask them a question and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Okay, so these are definitely, section 3 is definitely worth a read through. Right, so they've been quite helpful in the contract notice and giving quite a lot of information. They don't usually, buyers don't always do that. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to log in because I am going to go to, no, hang on a minute, I won't actually. Yes, I will. I'll go to PCS-t. I've got it set up as one sign-on, so I can get through to it using PCS, which is good. So this is PCS, PCS-t. You'll know the difference because you've got the kelpies here on PCS-t. It is a different look and feel to using PCS. I wish they had called it something completely different, because it's actually really difficult for people to get their head around the fact there's 2 different sites, but they're called something very, very similar. So this is PCS-t. They do have a contact us if you've got any difficulties using the site, and the phone number as well. And they are really, really helpful. I've had to use them a couple of times myself. So what I should have pointed out before, but I'll tell you now, is that you need to usually know a reference number or at least a title of what we're going to look for in here. Because if you go into ITTs, what you'll see again is there's an awful lot of different tenders here, and you would probably take a wee while looking for the one that you are going to apply for, and you might actually choose the wrong one, because unfortunately in here it doesn't actually have a column for who the buyer is. Otherwise you would be able to see South Lanarkshire Council there, but just the way the system is, that it doesn't actually have that. So if we go into ITTs open to all suppliers, we're going to search for it. In this case, I noted down before that it's project code, and it is 29857. If I type that in there and click search on the right hand side, it comes up. Now, as you can see, these are the 4 lots that we previously talked about. So if you are applying for more than 1 lot, and I don't think there's any limit on the number of lots that you can apply for, so just say you're the type of company that you provide different services and they might fall into different areas, then you can apply for different lots. But for the purposes of today, I think we'll just go into lot 1. Just because that's the first one we'll go into. Okay, so what you can see here, it tells you the type of services that will fall into the description of this lot, and it tells you not really an awful lot more than that, actually. It tells you the closing date again, 3rd of December, which we knew. And then this is the first time you see the closing date for questions. It's the 19th of November. It tells you it's 90% quality stroke technical and 10% on commercial for awards, which is all things that we got as well from PCS. What you can do, I'm not going to do it just now, but you can click on the printable view, which you can then have as a PDF, and it shows you overall what the tender is about. So you could decide, right, I've seen all I want to see today, I'm going to decide later, but we're not going to do that. We are going to actually express interest, because as you can see, all you can get at the moment is like a front page of a folder. We're not actually seeing any information that would help us to apply for this at the moment. And we won't get that until we express interest. So we go to the top right hand blue button here, click on express interests, say confirm, and then as if by magic, you can get into this. Now, although we could only see the 4 lots, there's actually another one, another bit that you have to complete first, and this is the selection stage, qualification stage, same thing, different names for it, that you have to apply for. So we're going to go on to that first of all. And then, as you can see, because we clicked on lot 1, that is available to us too. So the way the system works is often it's the light blue writing is something that you can click on. So first of all, what I'm going to do is click on this one. It does say quite clearly, complete this first. And if you first of all go into this, you might think, oh, hang on a minute, I can't type anything in here. I can't click on these spaces, nothing's happening. And that's because, again, another one, is, you know, you've already said you want to apply, but again, you have to go up to the right-hand side here and say, intend to respond. So you do intend to respond. And then again, you think, okay, that's good. We've got mandatory responses missing, qualification response. That's what I expect to see. Still can't click into these fields. Why is that? Why is that the case? And that is because you have to click on this little thing here, which is a pencil. So that pencil tells you is basically edit. So if you hover over it, you can say open the response area to enter or modify your response. So you click onto that pencil, and then you do now finally get the opportunity to put your answers in. There are quite helpful calendars here, so you can just click on the calendar and it chooses the dates that you want. Then you have got, so if anybody was familiar with the single procurement document, the SPD, that's what this basically is, but put in an online format. And the good thing about using this system, PCS-t, is that it saves your previous responses. So quite a few of you said you've already used PCS-t in the past. The good news is you probably will, for this section anyway, have already answered the vast majority of the questions. So what you would do is you would go down, and obviously these have been saved from a previous tender for me. So I'm just going to scroll through these, but that's just about your company. Asks what size of business you are and gives you up here a key for what size the businesses are. So, number of people employed and turnover and so on. Asks if you are a supported business, which means that 30% or more of your staff have got a disability or from a disadvantaged background. So if you said yes in there, what happens is it then asks you for more information. So they're conditional questions. It's quite a good system that way. So if you put no, those conditional questions disappear. This next question is, if you are registered in the UK, and I presume that you all are, then your answer is not applicable. I am a UK business, and it's as straightforward. You don't need to understand any of the other bits. Are you bidding with others? So in this case, you might, the type of service that you want to provide, it might be a consortium. And if that's the case, you would put yes, and then you would complete this information in here. Keeping it simple, we'll say no. So then ask you which lots you're applying for. So let's just say we're only applying for lot 1 in this case. Then asks you for information about the representative of the company. So I've got my details in there. And then it asks if you are relying on the capacity of another bidder to meet the selection criteria. So if you answer yes to that, then you need to upload a completed SPD for each of those other companies. And on this left-hand side, you'll see this little thing that looks like a warning triangle. It's actually an attachment. So if you click on that, what we'll do is it'll download the SPD in a Word form, and then you need to get that completed by the other organisation and upload it here as an attachment. So that's only if you're relying on them and their capacity to bid for this contract. So again, I'm going to go up here and put no, just to keep this application straightforward. Do you intend to subcontract? And if you say yes, yet again, you need information on the subcontractors, and you've got to complete parts 2A, 2B and part 3 of the SPD for those subcontractors. So again, we're just going to say no here. And then we've got all of these questions, which are exclusion questions. I would refer to them as the mass murderer questions. So you would go through all of these. And again, if you say yes, then it asks for all of the details there. Okay, so I'm going to put no. I'm not going to go through all of these questions. You can go through those. You'll probably be quite familiar if you've applied for other bids that with these. So until you get down to part 3D, these for some reason do not save. I don't know why, because they're pretty much asked in every single case. And so have you been guilty of serious misrepresentation? Going to put no. Withheld this information, should be not applicable, but it's not, so you've got to say no. No. Had influenced the decision-making process, no. Now, this is where we get into more contract-specific information down at the bottom. It's asking, you must have a valid registration with Companies House. And if not, then you'll have to upload something that proves you are operating from that address. So maybe some of you are self-employed sole traders rather than, or partnerships rather than companies, so you would need to have something that you can prove that you are a bona fide business operating from the address that you're applying from. Now, again, some of the things that you're doing may require a membership of something. So, like, for example, if it was for an accountancy thing, then you would need qualified chartered accountant. If it was a lawyer, then you would need to be a member of the Law Society. So there might be something in your case that you have to be a member of to be able to do what you're doing, in which case you would answer yes to this and put the details in. But if not, then it's okay to say no as well. Now, this is where we get into these requirements that were set out in the contract notice. So in this case, they have got an attachment. So if you open that attachment, let me just see if I can open it. Put it on the screen. So they're only asking for this as 1 year. So you can choose whichever year it is. So just say your profit. Let me just see. The name and value. Please complete the blue cells below. So let's just say it's £25,000 profit. Then it tells you that's a pass. Let's just say my current assets are 20,000 and my current liabilities are 15,000. Then that tells me it's a pass. If I don't have any borrowing and my shareholder funds are £200, then that's a pass. So basically that's what you need to do from your latest set of accounts, is put these figures in here. You would then save that to your folder, and then you would upload that. So if I just save that as, let me just save it. I'll just put in downloads and put complete. Save that. And I close that again. Then what you would have to do is, now it's not telling me where I can attach it. So it's only got this as opposed to attachment. So you would put those figures and everything in there. But what I would suggest, let me just see if I go to the bottom, if there's a general attachments area. No, there isn't. Right, so now we've got the opportunity to show you the how to ask a question. So we'd go up here, and that was 1.73, which is 4B4. Okay, so the other thing to mention is keep saving your changes. So save your changes, because it doesn't save them automatically as you go along, so you have to save it. I'm going to now have to save and exit this response because I want to ask a question. So you can't ask a question while you're actually editing it. So I'm going to go up to here, and there's messages already. So let's have a look at them. So there's actually already quite a few questions. So before I ask this question, I'm just going to have a look at this bulletin because it might have already been asked. So we'll go on to this bulletin. Attachments, yeah. Where to find the tender attachments, empty folders. So that's the little warning triangle that I showed you. That's where the attachments are. Right, so what people don't understand is there's reference to attachments, but they're actually in the questions under the little triangle. It's about locations. Oh, there's no pricing schedule. Can you please conduct by mini competition? That's for lot 2. Page limits for there's no page limits. Right, so there's nothing in there relevant to what it is I was going to ask. So if I go into messages, and on the left here, you'll see create message, and it's about the qualification envelope, and it's about attachments. Attachment responses. Just put response. So good afternoon. With regards to question 1.73, which is 4B4, there is a spreadsheet to be attached to the question. Do you require this to be completed and uploaded with our response? If so, can you advise how to do so? To do this, please. The question only has a space for free text, and we can't see a general attachments area at the end of the qualification. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. So that's just to ask whether, now they might come back and say to this, you don't need to upload attachments. It's just there to help you with the calculation, and you put the figures from the spreadsheet into the free text box. But I just want to make sure that is the case. So we'll send that message. Now, the good thing is you can see in sent that anytime you can go into your sent messages, you can see, and you can see whether it's been read by them. It'll be a 1 if it's read, and whether they have replied, it will be there. So there's a good chance they won't actually reply to the message. They're more likely just to incorporate it into the next bulletin that comes out. Okay, so if you go into received, again, once you have opened these, you can see when you opened it. And if you replied to it, then you can do that here. It's worth noting that with PCS-t, they can see who has submitted the question. Please don't let that stop you asking a question. It's just so that you don't, I mean, I don't think you would, but some people get a bit narky with their questions. It's just worth saying don't do that, because they're going to know who it is. So if you wanted to, you can start to draft a question, and then you can save it and come back to it later, and you'll find it in your draft messages. And also, if you wanted to, if you had different users on PCS-t, you could forward it to different people. But in most cases, what you do once you've opened it, if you're working on it as a team, what you'll tend to do is download it and circulate it by email to everybody. Okay, so that is the question and answer. If you have got any questions on that bit or this bit on the questions, please do post a comment now in the chat, or do the bulletins run sequentially? Yes, I think they do. If you open bulletin 5, some are different. Some organisations, what they do is they don't build on it. Like, so each bulletin that comes out will only have the most recent questions. So if you look at this that we've just looked at, so these are questions. Yes, so you can see you got bulletin 1, which is broadcast on the 22nd, bulletin 2 on the 23rd, bulletin 3, bulletin 4, bulletin 5. So they've done it in that order that you have to scroll all the way down. But yes, you could just open bulletin 5 and you would see everything that's been published in the other bulletins. So that answered that question. I think there was another question, just trying to see it. Let's see if I can get my
was asking if there's any support for things like financial ratios with third sector, where these terms are not used as standard.
Right, so as long as you have got a set of accounts, you know, if it's a company and a set of accounts, then these terms will mostly be there. They might not use the word profit, but it will likely be, you know, an excess or something along those lines. So when you are third sector, it's obviously not usually an aim to make a profit. But what you tend to do is use the money that you've raised in order to deliver services, charitable services. So it is a bit different. What they are suggesting in there is that if you don't meet the criteria, so just say this last year you've actually spent more than you got in because you intended to do that because you were using up some reserves or something like that. So that would basically be looking as if you've made a loss. Then if the other questions are work out as a pass, then it doesn't actually matter because you only have to pass 2 out of 3. So you know, you if you only pass 2, if you pass 2 out of 3, then that's totally fine. But if you find yourself failing 2 out of 3, then I think it's worth checking all of the list of things there. It's given sort of lots of options for ways out, if you like, of other things, and see if any of them apply. And if not, I still think it's worth, it could be worth asking a question. So if you find yourself in the position where you're failing 2 out of 3, then I still think it's worth asking the question to say you are third sector, it's slightly different, you're not a profit-making body, and you know, could they might even do another spreadsheet that's specifically for third sector organisations. So the one that we looked at, they might do a third sector organisation equivalent for you, which would be really good. Depending on the size of your organisation, you know, you may be audited, you may not be audited, but usually if you do have accountants who prepare the accounts, then they'll be able to do this really, really easily. The term gearing, it's basically just about how able the organisation would be able to continue if it got into more difficult financial situations. So a highly geared company is a high risk company because no matter how it performs, it still has to pay back interest on loans. Where if it's low geared, then it's low risk because it only has to pay out dividends if it's doing well. So that's why gearing is important. But I'll be very honest with you, I don't really think any of these things are hugely important in this case, because there's going to be a fair number of providers on, and if any of them did unfortunately go bankrupt or be unable to provide a service, then there would be other service providers there. So I think they're probably going to be pretty generous with this, and they wouldn't want any of you to fail on that criteria. So if you don't understand it, or if you don't think you are going to pass it, then I think it's worth asking a question. Hope that's okay. So to get back to where you want to be, you go back up to ITT details. That's fine. You go up to ITT details and go to my response, and you'll see here that we're only missing one mandatory response now. You would go back in and edit that. So we got down as far as 1.73. Unfortunately, it doesn't anchor it or anything. You have to scroll down every time you come back in, which is why sometimes I just make a separate note of the questions and then come back to it. Okay, so 1.73, that's the financial bit that we've just been talking about. And then there's an insurance requirement. So it's asking for professional indemnity insurance of 5 million, employer's liability of 10 million, and public liability of 5 million. So you would then say whether you actually have this or not. If you're like me, I don't have any employees, so the employer's liability doesn't apply. There is an option to say that. Also, just say this is quite new to you, and at the moment you don't have any professional risk indemnity, then you can, you've got the option to say no, but I commit to obtain it. If you say no and I cannot commit to obtaining it, then that would be a fail. So you've got two options really. One is I've got it, and the other one is no, but I'll get it. Okay, so what's left on here? The applicants recommended for award onto this PSA will be training providers with experience delivering vocational and employability training to children and young people. Applicants are required to provide examples that demonstrate the relevant experience delivering these services over the last 3 years. So again, they have got quite a nice template here that you would go in and fill in. So you put your name up here, your company name, business name up there, and then provide the details that they've asked for: start date, end date, and description of the services. And they're looking for 3 examples over the last 3 years. Has anybody got any problems with that aspect of providing evidence of past experience that's relevant to what you're applying for?
Nothing in the chat.
No. Okay, and then it asks about PVG declaration, and that you must have that prior to the award. So let me see. It's a requirement of this PCA that the bidders recommended complete and submit when requested to do so. So you don't have to do it just now. The PVG declaration. Just say whether you agree to doing that. So you would say yes. So although it mentions educational professional qualifications, that's not what it's actually referring to in this case. It's referring to PVG. I'll give you a little bit of explanation. The form, the single procurement form, is fixed. You can't really amend the questions. You can't. So what sometimes buyers do, and what SLC is doing here, is they're trying to use a question for a purpose that's relevant to them and to this particular tender, but they can't reword this. So that one is actually about the PVG. Right, so now that's interesting because that looks like the same question in 1.761 and 1.763. I can't see a difference there. So I'm going to do you a favour. I'm going to take a note of those and ask the questions as well. 4C6, 1.764 and 4C6.1. Okay, and then you just got to say what percent of the subcontract. Right. Right, so they have got an attachment here as well, which you have to read just to say whether or not you have a quality management system in place. And then at the end of it, you just put in, you know, your details, your name, your position, the date, and your location. And then you would save and exit. So you can save your changes. But if you wanted to come back to a different point in time, you would save and exit. So just because I'm going to ask another question, I'm going to go into messages again. I'm going to create a message. And again, it refers to qualification envelope, and it's 1.76.1 and 1.76.4. I'm going here, the guidance attached to 1.76.1 brackets 4C6 and 1.76.4 4C6.1 appear to be identical. Can you advise, please? Also, can you confirm that the PVG declaration does not need to be uploaded at this stage? Okay, so we'll send that as a message as well. So they've actually read, while we've been online, they have read the very first one about the attachments. So going to receive, nothing more has been received, so they're probably getting some questions in. What you would then do, we've got to again go back to ITT details, go back to my response, and you can see here that all questions have been answered. What you would then do at that point, if you're satisfied, I wouldn't do it at this stage because we've got a couple of questions pending and that will alter your response possibly. But it's good to know that all the questions are answered. What you would then do is you go up to the top right hand side and you click on submit response. It then validates it just to check that you haven't missed anything, and then it will be showing up as having been submitted. So if we go into back to multi-lot ITTs, you can see here that's the one that we were doing, and it still says response to be submitted to the buyer because we didn't click submit. Once that has been clicked, it says response submitted to the buyer. And the good thing about this system is that you can alter that anytime right up to the deadline. What I would say is just be really careful that you don't do any alterations at thelastminute.com, because you might get caught and it's not been submitted. You've taken it out of submitted, you're making a change, you go to submit it and you miss the deadline. So I would say please be very careful about that, about amending things at the last minute. So that's the first one, that's the qualification envelope. You can see that it's actually fairly straightforward, hopefully, to complete and work your way through that. So let's have a look at what the next one is like. Before I go, you can see in here there are attachments, but there's nothing really specific to this one. So we are not going to go into that just now. Let's go on to the one that we were looking at again, go into my response. So here you can see that there are file attachments. So you might be thinking, hang on a minute, and I think this is where the questions have arisen that are being answered in the bulletin. Where are these attachments? Because there's no little triangles on these ones. And I noticed, so let's do intent to respond first so that we're making sure that we're not going to miss anything. So there are 17 mandatory questions and 2 questions for pricing. And yeah, when you go down to here, it's asking for a file to be attached, but it doesn't have any files here. So what they've done is, if we go back into here and go back into the very first one that we did, you'll notice that there's 21 buyer attachments up here. So if you click on that, you can see that these are the documents you need to be completed to upload with the different questions. So let me just see. Let me see if there's one here. There's a ratio one that we looked at. Free text response attachment. So this is the one. So what they're saying is use this template to respond to the questions in the technical envelope. So if we open that one, so you would then need to copy and paste. So we can do this as we go through it. So we go in here and go use this arrow at the top to go back in here. We'll look at the technical response. So the first one is just a drop-down box. Does your organisation pay all employees the real living wage? So we would say yes in there. If you say no, there'll be follow-up. Oh, there aren't any follow-up questions. But it does say here it's a mandatory requirement because it's grant funding the council's receiving. So if you don't pay the real living wage, then unfortunately, that is a yes, no, pass fail sort of question. So they're looking for a bullet point list you can deliver within this lot. Provide definitions for service terminology used. So what I would do is copy that, go into this one, and it was question 1.18. Go in here, put that in there. 1.1.8, I'd need to double check that. What was it? 1.1.87. 1.1.7. Obviously, you'd be doing this on 2 screens, so you'd be able to see. And then you'd put your provider ABC in here. And then you've got space to put your response. Now, I did notice in one of the bulletins, there's no limit, there's no page limit or anything, but it asks here specifically for a bullet point list. and so it's not asking you to go into a lot of detail at this point in time about what these services are, but just say, for example, I don't know, you would say interview skills or something like that. You might then go on to explain what you do to enhance somebody's interview skills. And then you can see here, you've got the option to do it as a bullet point list, just like you would in any document. So you say provider ABC can provide following services in this lot. And then you would go on to put your details in there. Again, save that. So I'll save it to my downloads, and I'm just going to put in here, I'm going to call it question 1.1.7 provider ABC response, and save it and close it. And then what you can do is you can then browse, and if I go into, hopefully go into downloads, must be in different downloads, but I think it was in documents, downloads. I'm just going to grab a random one for the purpose of this demonstration. But obviously, wherever you've saved yours, and you'll have a folder called SLC Employability, and then within there you've got your tender responses. So I would say that don't do it the way I'm doing it just now, which is you see the question, you do the response, you upload it. I would just get all of these Word documents ready with all of the questions, save them with the question number and maybe a description, and then complete those Word documents until you're happy with them. Make sure that they answer every single part of the question, and then you upload them in this way. And as you can see, there's this little waste bin at the end there. So if you do want to change your mind, you can just click on that and it deletes it. It's gone. The good thing is these are all marked with an asterisk, which means they are mandatory questions. So you can't fall into the trap of submitting your bid without answering any of these questions, because it won't let you. But what you can do, what you've really got to guard against, is that you pick up the wrong file. You pick up a file that's not complete, that's a blank version, or you pick up file for the wrong question because you're doing it in a hurry, and you maybe submit the same response for 2 different questions by mistake. So just make sure that you've got the right numbers, the right description, and that you're choosing a completed file when you're uploading these. So most of them are these. In the case of, basically you've got to copy and paste this over, do exactly what I did for that Word document, do the same for all of these questions, and then start to complete those. For the community benefits, it's just, I think this just asking you if you are prepared to deliver community benefits. And the thing is, probably what you do, a lot of what you do is stuff for the community anyway. But they will have guidance on community benefits to help you with that. And then they've got more questions where they're going to have attachments. There's a section here on taxation, which I've never actually seen before in a tender. These aren't scored, they're for information only. Once you have completed those, so you would save your changes, save and exit. You can see here I haven't actually answered any. There are still 16 responses outstanding that you have to do. If you go into commercial response, you can see here there's a pricing schedule for you to complete and a form of offer that you need to download and complete and then attach again. There's one of these to do for each lot. So if you are applying for different lots, then just be careful. I mean, some of the questions might be apply across every single lot, but other questions won't. So for example, the one that we just looked at, the one that we put in there already, the one about the services, it won't apply across all of the lots. So you'd have to do a separate one for it. So in your description, you would have lot 1, lot 2, lot 3, lot 4, in the file name again, either that or you have different folders and you have a folder for lot 1, folder for lot 2. These are just sort of like administration around the bids that will make your life a lot easier. So once you have done all of that, you can validate your response. So if we validate mine, it will take you to the sections. Well, it doesn't take you to them, unfortunately, but you can see with the red, the questions that you're missing. So obviously it's not going to accept that. But when you have completed it, you will then be able to submit it. And again, you'll see that when you come back to the overall picture. So if we go back to here, you can see these two that are still running and still say response to be submitted to buyer. So when you then come back in, so if I go to home, and just say you've been working on this, you know, you've had to take a break, you're coming back into it, you click into ITTs, you don't have to do that bit at the beginning where you're searching again. You just go into my ITTs. And obviously I've got a lot more because of the type of job that I've got. But for you, you probably will just have these two in here. If you do want to look for lot 2, then you can go into this again and project code 29857. See, you can see the other ones there, so you would click on lot 2, express interest in that, and then when you come to your go home again, log back in, go to ITTs, go to my ITTs, you can see you've now got lot 2 there as well, and you click on the light blue to go into there, and it's exactly the same as we've just done. So it looks to me like they are going to use the generic one for all the attachments, and the generic one for all of the questions and answers as well. So that just makes life a lot easier. It means you don't have to keep going in and out of all of the lots. You'll know that you go into the main one. That is our demo of sort of finding your way around this a bit more. I'm keen to hear from you how you found it, and if there's anything else you want me to go over or any further questions.